After 11 years of employment with Agora, a company, Robinson, the submarine captain, was abruptly let go. Agora was a company that scoured the ocean floor for sunken ships. Robinson was a devoted Navy officer before coming to work at Agora. He loved his work, but his love caused him to forget about his family, which is why his wife filed for divorce and forced him to live apart from his son Martin. Having devoted his entire life to the company, Robinson was deeply disappointed by that decision. His performance had never let him down. Aside from that, Robinson received £8,600 in severance pay, and he was unable to seek more because he was not under contract. Robinson met Kirsten and Blackie, two other Agora employees who had also been fired, at a cafe after he had left the company. They expressed their dissatisfaction with the company for firing them without providing a good reason, and as a result, Robinson became more and more embarrassed to meet his son, who at the time had lived with his extremely wealthy stepfather, and Kirsten was forced to take an antidepressant due to stress over how to support his family, given his numerous debts. Just before he was let go, Kirsten had told them about one of his trips with Agora at that point. He once traveled to the Black Sea in an attempt to locate a Nazi-left submarine that was said to contain millions of dollars worth of gold nuggets. The ship was located, but the submarine remained at the bottom of the ocean since the company had not touched it at all. The reason for all of this was the conflict that existed between Georgia and Russia. The border separating these two nations is the Black Sea. Naturally, Agora didn't want their company to be seen as meddling in the political affairs of the two nations if they chose to travel there. They were unhappy with the company that had sacked them, so they made the decision to use a submarine to steal the treasure, with Robinson serving as the leader. They needed a lot of money to complete the expedition, so Kirsten asked Blackie and Robinson to meet with an investor named Lewis. Daniels, his secretary, welcomed both of them right away and assisted them in explaining why they were there. The Nazis faced financial difficulties in 1941 and turned to Russia for assistance. Russia, which at the time was still neutral, granted the request in the hopes that the Nazis would not cause any problems for them. Hitler continued to occupy Russia for 4 years after a submarine carrying a gold loan was sent, but the submarine never made it to Germany. Rumors about the submarine surfaced after a number of years, and Agora was the one who found it. However, a month after Agora's discovery, hostilities between Georgia and Russia erupted, forcing Agora to abandon her discovery in order to avoid the ongoing crisis. Robinson needed Lewis to invest $180,000 so that he could use a submarine to retrieve the treasure. Lewis accepted right away and requested a 40% share. Daniels was also sent by him to serve as his envoy on the expedition. Following the agreement, Robinson and Blackie started recruiting members. Since they would be traveling through Russian territory, Robinson desired that half of his team be Russian. Reynolds and Peters, who had served in the Navy, were the first two chosen. He then hired Baba to work in sonar, Zaitsev to work in engines, and Levchenko to work in the kitchen. Morozov was selected to read the diagrams, and Fraser and Gittins, two trustworthy divers, were picked by Robinson to be the ones who would eventually be in charge of removing the gold from the German submarine. A teenager by the name of Tobin appeared the day before they were to leave and introduced himself as Kirsten's friend. He said that Kirsten had killed himself in order to obtain insurance money for his wife, and that as a result of Kirsten's inability to participate in the expedition, he was given a will to go to Robinson and express regret. Robinson asked Tobin to join his crew because he appeared so desperate and they were prepared to go. Accepting the invitation, Tobin and Robinson's group set out for their departure point, Sevastopol, where their submarine was waiting for them. Despite the submarine's worn-out appearance, Robinson maintained hope. Without delay, he gave his crew orders to prepare at every station for the submarine's inspection. Numerous issues. When they took over the other side of the ship, Reynolds stated that the submarine was severely damaged, with the steering shaft suffering the most damage. The steering shaft was only able to function for 36 hours before all of the engines failed. Robinson approached the Russians to offer them peace, because he didn't want to die. He clarified that they could take the required spare parts from the German submarine they were currently on, because it was the same model as the one they were looking for. Finding the German submarine's precise location was the first task they had to do. The divers would then reach the submarine and retrieve the necessary spare parts, but Baba would have to use his hearing to locate the German submarine because the sonar had been damaged in the previous incident. Baba would utilize vibrations to identify objects surrounding the ship, and Fraser and Zaitsev would be in charge of operating the submarine. Luckily, Baba located something about 100 meters away from them. However, despite the close distance, it was unclear if the object was the submarine they were searching for or simply some sand dunes. Tobin offered to dive with Fraser and Peter in order to check it out, because he thought he could handle it because of his previous experience at a scuba diving club while still in school. After exiting the submarine, the three of them dove into the shadowy Black Sea. Tobin was anxious and afraid because he was a novice, but fortunately, Fraser was able to reassure him. Fraser was disappointed to discover that the coordinates were nothing more than sand dunes, even though he and the others had succeeded in reaching them by following Robinson's instructions. The freezer was initially dissatisfied since he believed it to be a sand dune. Fortunately, Tobin noticed something buried beneath the sand, which proved to be the submarine. Within, numerous skulls were discovered. They quickly took the steering shaft out of the engine room after discovering that it was identical to the one in their submarine. Fraser discovered the gold they were searching for while he was checking the submarine's condition. Without first requesting Robinson's permission, he carried the steering shaft and the gold. Robinson still came to the conclusion that they were pulling gold because the load was too great for the steering shaft alone. Daniels asked Robinson to remove some of the gold because he didn't think the submarine could handle the load, but Robinson was confident that the steering shaft and all the gold could be moved at the same time. This ultimately caused harm to Peter, who attempted to save some gold bars that were falling, but ultimately fell into the trench. The crew disagreed on how to successfully raise the gold to the surface following its successful retrieval. The others disagreed, arguing that if they surfaced, a Russian patrol ship would undoubtedly intercept them. Daniels, however, felt that they should go to the surface because it was too dangerous to return to Sevastopol. Nearly all of them were willing to take a significant chance in an attempt to restart the submarine and escape the Russian Sea. Sensing he had run out of words, Daniels asked Robinson to have a private conversation. Daniels disclosed that Agora had been Robinson's financial backer all along. Everything, even the ambush they would pull off after Robinson and his crew surfaced, had been planned. Robinson didn't buy it at first, but Daniels gave Robinson all the details, including the time and location of their cafe encounter, and admitted that Kirsten was merely a hired performer. Similar to Lewis, who served as his financier, Daniels was Agora's secretary, not genuinely Lewis's. Robinson locked Daniels up right away after becoming extremely alarmed. Considering that Peter and Blackie had died in vain, he was filled with guilt. When Robinson eventually told the rest of the crew, they all became very upset and wanted to kill Daniela. However, Robinson was able to defuse the situation by explaining that killing Daniel wouldn't make a difference. Robinson made the decision to take the submarine to the Turkish Sea, where the Russian patrol or Agora would not dare to interfere, because he didn't want to be discovered and have all of his efforts wasted. Naturally, this was extremely risky, because Morozov knew that crossing the rocky, shallow seabed would be dangerous, but they all agreed that there was no other choice. As the others calculated the gold, they attached the steering shaft first. Daniels was called upon once more to assist Fraser, but this time it proved to be a mistake, as Daniels had encouraged Zaitsev's murder after meeting Fraser. The submarine was restarted after the preparations were finished, and Zaitsev was assigned to take care of the shaft's stability. At a depth of 60 meters, Robinson was able to stabilize the submarine after the steering shaft initially caught fire and rocked the entire craft. They had no trouble at all sailing along until Baba spotted a big crag. Robinson told them to stop right away. Thankfully, the ship was able to stop before hitting it, thanks to the cooperation of the entire crew. It looked like they entered the shallow area, and now they might reach their destination in an hour or turn around and go through a gap less than 100 meters wide. Robinson decided to pass through the opening since he had faith that Baba could lead them around the rocks. Fraser was dissatisfied with this choice because Robinson had not given his crew's safety enough thought. Fraser's opinion didn't matter to Robinson, who gave the order for the entire crew to return to their assigned posts right away. Daniels kept trying to convince Fraser to murder Zaitsev. Fraser initially objected, but after running into difficulties trying to pass through, he decided to change his mind. He called Zaitsev, stating that he needed help, but he killed him with a wrench after agreeing with Daniels that they should go to the surface, rather than imposing Robinson's insane idea. Fraser then followed Daniels to inform them of Zaitsev's passing. The explanation that Fraser's clothes and face were covered in blood led many to doubt the official version of events, which stated that Zaitsev had died from being struck. When Daniels persisted in asking Robinson to bring the submarine to the surface, something terrible transpired. Fraser questioned why they were traveling faster despite not having arrived at the seafloor. As it turned out, they were plummeting into a trench, which increased the external pressure acting on the submarine. Robinson and the others went to the engine room after hearing of a leak, but as soon as the leak was sealed off, a larger hole appeared, and the pressurized water hit Tobin, causing him to pass out. Tobin was taken out of there right away by Robinson and Morozov, while the others attempted to plug the engine room leak. Regretfully, the leak persisted and eventually overwhelmed them. Daniels made the decision to abandon the rest of the crew and close the engine room after realizing there was no chance of survival. All they could do was wait for the room to fill with water and submerge them. Soon afterward, there was an explosion caused by a short circuit in one of the lights. Daniels ran to another door and shut it after realizing the water could no longer be contained in the first one. His belt unintentionally became stuck. Morozov was asked to assist, but he declined since he was aware of what Daniels was doing to his friends in the engine room. It was just Robinson, Morozov, and Tobin, realizing all of his crew had perished. Remarkably, there were only 3 life jackets when Robinson removed the one he had kept. The fact that his own captain had concealed the life jacket infuriated Morozov. There wasn't time to think, but he felt bad for his friends who were drowning below while he was able to survive. After depressurizing the submarine, Robinson would follow via the emergency route. But first, Morozov and Tobin put on their life jackets. Robinson refused Tobin's request to take a gold bar, stating that it might affect the jacket's functionality. Without delay, the pair entered the submarine through its exit, and Robinson propelled them towards the surface. Tobin was overjoyed to see the sun again once they reached the surface, but Morozov caught up to him and told him to wait for Robinson. Regretfully, Morozov was aware that Robinson had misled them. Robinson made the decision to go down with the ship because there was no escape route in the submarine. Especially after another life jacket floated close to them, Tobin was in disbelief. Tobin mistakenly believed it to be Robinson, but it was actually all the gold bars and a family portrait of the Robinsons. Thank you for watching the movie. If you like it, then please subscribe to Simply Recap. Cheers.